What's up, YouTube? It's the homie Joshua, and today I'm going to talk about how I went from being validated as a prison gang member to becoming a nationally recognized gang expert for immigration attorneys, criminal defense attorneys in state court and in federal court. So in 1996, at 19, I caught a case for attempted murder and I went to prison. About halfway through my stay, I was validated as a Northern Structure / Nuestra Raza prison gang member and sent to the SHU program. I paroled from the Pelican Bay SHU in December of 2005, and I got into a lot of community work, right? Community-based violence prevention. I was teaching in schools. I was doing stuff at juvenile hall. I was on the block all over the Bay with people, creating workshops and speaking at conferences and creating curriculum and the whole 9 yards, right? So fast forward, in 2012, a young person that I knew very well from East Palo Alto was driving, and to make a long story short, he had a knife on his hip, like those big Crocodile Dundee knives. And those are legal when you're walking around, but you have your shirt tucked behind the handle and be wearing it so it's, not concealed. And he knew that, and he followed that law. But when sitting in the car, his shirt did cover it, and the law says that if a weapon is substantially concealed, then it's against the law, which is up to the discretion of the officer. So anyways, he gets pulled over by gang task force, and they find the knife. He tells them about it. They get the knife, and then they search the vehicle. Somebody else in the car was on probation. They search the vehicle, and in the back of the vehicle, they find a couple baseball bats and some tennis balls. One of the baseball bats has, in kind of chicken scratch almost, the word Midtown, which is a section of East Palo Alto, right? East Palo Alto is divided up between the Gardens, Midtown, the Ville, and then over the ramp. And they got the flood up. So anyways, Midtown is a significant portion of East Palo Alto. And then elsewhere on the bat is written the word mob, which is a common term. The police said that he was a gang member, right? That he was a norteño that was a part of Midtown mob. So put a pin in that for a second. His investigator was a retired police officer who called me as a character witness and said, "What do you know about this individual being in a gang?" I said, "He's not in a gang. I know him, I know his whole family, and he's too independent for that stuff, to be honest." And he says, "Well, they say he's a part of Midtown Mob." So there's no such gang in East Palo Alto. There are gangs in EPA that have Midtown in the name, but none of them are specifically called Midtown Mob. And so he says, "How do I prove that?" I said, "Go to the police station and tell them you want to see a list of everybody that's a part of Midtown Mob." There will be no such list. The EPA police, like many police departments, keeps their own file of individuals that they have identified as gang members or associates and who they're affiliated with. And that happens even if you've never been convicted of a crime. In this case, my guy does have a prior felony and did a year in juvenile hall for gun possession during a robbery, right? So nonetheless, but he had gotten home, he had transformed his life, he graduated from high school, he wound up getting into college at San Jose State, he worked with us, he helped, he encouraged other people in his family to make healthier choices. All around awesome guy. Artist, tattoo artist, which also didn't make the chicken scratch make any sense on his bat because he's a bona fide artist, right? And so, sure enough, East Palo Alto police say there's no such thing as this gang, and we don't have this individual labeled as a gang member anywhere in our paperwork. When the investigator tells the attorney, turns out the attorney was also my attorney when I was a juvenile decades prior, being tried as an adult in San Mateo County. He calls me in. He says, "Have you thought about being a gang expert?" I said, "No, I was validated as a prison gang member. I've been labeled as a street gang member the vast majority of my life. There's no way," right? He says, "No, because you have, lived experience, but also you have all these years of current experience working with individuals from different neighborhoods. And I work with Northerners and Southerners and blacks and Polynesians and, everybody, right? From different neighborhoods, from different cities, and non-affiliated people, folks that are just kind of in the hood lifestyle, but maybe aren't really clicked up with any group. Men coming home from prison, whether or not they were affiliated." So anyways, he says, "That's what makes you valuable to this conversation." I said, "Okay, what do I do?" And so he got me approved to be a gang expert for the county public defender's office, right? Which they call the private defender, but that's another story. And the lead investigator for that agency says, I'll pay you $50 an hour. I'll approve you for $50 an hour for any attorney that wants to use you. And I'm like, man, I've been doing nonprofit work, so $50 an hour is a lot. You know what I mean? Especially for, a guy like me with a background like mine. So I write a report. And, I spent years writing in prison and writing essays and schooling. I was a teacher in there. So writing is a comfort for me, right? And so I write this report explaining how none of this makes sense. This individual is not a gang member. The other allegation they made, which is very common, is that he was going to do a gang activity. He was driving over the ramp to, quote unquote, put in work on rivals. Now, in reality, he lived over the ramp in the apartments, and anybody who knows East Palo Alto at the time knows that it was pretty close to the Wild Wild West. People were literally getting shootouts on main streets in the middle of the day. So the idea that somebody would go put in work with a knife and a couple baseball bats is just laughable, right? So I explained all that, and I explained why he's not a gang member, and I explained how Midtown Mob is not a gang, and that they're criminalizing the use of a term that actually defines a big section of East Palo Alto. So nonetheless, they dropped the gang charges, right? Which means he avoids prison. He still has to do a little time in the county because of the possession of the knife, but the gang part is done. That started a cycle, right? Other attorneys started to want to use me. And then some of you from the Bay Area might remember there was a RICO indictment out of South San Francisco when there was a number of people killed in one incident. I got retained on that case by federal attorneys. And again, it kind of snowballed. So in terms of immigration, I got involved in that arena when DACA was passed. Because with DACA, part of the requirements to get DACA is that you're not labeled by as a gang member by any law enforcement agency. So it doesn't mean that you haven't been convicted of a crime or you have. That doesn't matter, right? That's relevant in other ways. But it's not like you have to have been convicted of a crime with a gang enhancement in order to be denied DACA. If a school resource officer 5 years prior said you were wearing, red shoelaces or a blue belt and labeled you as a gang member and you may not even know, then you're done, right? If you have tattoos, you're done. I actually did a segment on Vice Media, one of their news programs, talking about that. Maybe I'll post it at some point. So anyways, that's how that happened, right? And then during the wave of mass migration from the northern triangle of Central America, El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, there was a lot of asylum petitions. And again, people are coming a lot of times because of experiences that they've had with quote unquote gangs in Central America. Their families have been killed, they've been extorted, they've been pressured, whatever the case may be. And the government doesn't generally recognize experience with a gang in another country as being a protected class, so to speak, that would allow you to apply for asylum. Your race, your gender, your political beliefs, everything else counts. But being terrorized by people with machetes doesn't count. So I fought that, right? And one by one worked on those cases. Also in immigration, if you're going through the process, one of the last steps is you get reviewed by a medical person, right? But in that process, they review your tattoos. And I remember a time I had a lady, she was like 60 years old, man, coming here from Mex. And she had a tattoo on her ankle of Tinkerbell with those asterisks around it, right? Well, according to the paper that the medical people had, stars are a reflection of membership in La Nuestra Familia. So they said, no, you're denied entry because you're part of Nuestra Familia. That's, again, laughable and pretty upsetting. She got a Tinkerbell because her grandkids talked her into it. So those are the kind of cases, right? In terms of criminal cases, I've done everything from homicides to multiple homicides to appeals on homicide cases. I had a Sureño out of San Jose who had done 12 years on a murder. His case came back on appeal. Him and I worked very, very closely together in Santa Clara County. And sure enough, he wound up pleading a deal to some type of an assault charge, which is essentially time served. And he was home by the holidays. Prior to that, he had a life sentence. I also worked cases where gangs, quote unquote, are not a factor, but the hood lifestyle is. And so, for example, a young black dude from Hunters Point got popped carrying a pistol. And why was he carrying the pistol? Because he had been repeatedly threatened by unknown individuals and therefore felt that that was his way of security. As a lot of you guys know, man, young people walk the streets with pistols, and older people, not always with the intention of harming somebody, but rather as a protection, as a shield, right? So they pray they don't use it. But if somebody comes for them, they feel more comfortable knowing that they're strapped. So, and there's reasons for that, right? Distrust of law enforcement, under-resourced communities, etc., etc. So I fought that case. So everything, I deal with all kinds of cases. And it's been very interesting, right? It's been profitable, and sometimes it's not consistent work. It's not like I work 40 hours a week. If that was the case, I would own several houses, right? And it kind of ebbs and flows. As many of you know, there's a RICO indictment involving folks in the state prison system, supposed to be affiliated with the Nuestra Familia. I fully anticipate to be working on that case to some degree. I'm not going to come on here on YouTube and announce the details of it because not only is that illegal, it's also very unethical. But yeah, I expect to be in that arena. I've been doing this for many years. So that's how I got into the work. Why am I telling you all that? Right? It's not for pats on the back. It's because I can't do it all. There's plenty of work to go around. And I'm not always the best person, and I'll be very honest about that, right? So when I'm talking about country conditions in Honduras, I've never been there, right? Obviously. I don't have a history there. I have a homeboy of mine, Alex Sanchez, based out of LA, right? And one of the very early members of Mara. And so, he immigrated from El Salvador. And I talk with him a lot, right? And he covers a lot of cases out of Central America. Or individuals that have ties to Central America, both 18th Street and Mara. And he's a good friend, so we'll talk, right? And he's handed me work, and I've handed him work. But there's a small network of us. And law enforcement, the key arguments that they make are gangs, especially around gangs. Gangs' sole purpose is to intimidate people, demand respect, take over territory, kill their rivals, and that's it, right? My belief is that that's not true. And I argue that a lot of times successfully. I have not won every case that I've worked on, but I have a better percentage and a better rate than most attorneys do in terms of trials that they manage. So I'll argue with that, and I push back against that. My apologies. And so the reality is, neighborhoods exist for a variety of reasons. Gangs, quote unquote, exist for a variety of reasons. I take the argument and the position that to be a northerner or to be a southerner is not to necessarily be a gang member, right? That's what I call a quasi-cultural identity. So it's kind of like a cultural identity, but a little different. I'm not here to say all raza aligns. It's not like that, of course. But if you grow up in a neighborhood and people dress a certain way and people act a certain way and they hang out in certain spots and they tend to have conflicts with certain people, it's not unusual to adapt that, right? There's a lot of people who decide for themselves that they're going to be affiliated. There's new barrios popping up all over the state and all over the country all the time that are not connected to prison gangs or any organized network, right? Those guys don't get linked up until they actually go to prison. It's not like you need permission to start a little neighborhood in some far off place. You can't do that in an established spot, but it happens. And so to just say because somebody wears red or somebody wears blue or they have a certain number tattooed on them doesn't make you a gang member. To have the name of your neighborhood or your city tattooed on you does not make you a gang member, right? It's not unusual for people to be proud of where they come from. And so, but it's criminalized when it comes particularly to black and brown communities. So those are some of the things that I fight. The norms, the whole concept of not snitching and the value in that belief system and the survival factors in that belief system, right? And why does that exist? Because law enforcement is unreliable and oppressive oftentimes in communities of color. and they're very over policed, right? And so you're catching people in the neighborhood doing stuff at a much higher rate than other neighborhoods because, for example, to use East Palo Alto as an example again, the 2.2 square mile city was patrolled by the East Palo Alto Police Department, the Menlo Park Police Department, the Palo Alto Police Department, the San Mateo County Gang Task Force, the CHP, and then whenever the feds were in town, right? So that's 5 law enforcement agencies to cover 2.2 square miles. It's ridiculous. So yes, everybody's getting harassed. Oddly enough, a lot of murders and a lot of shootings don't get solved, right? So those are some of the things that I argue. I'm trying to do this video kind of quick, but I argue against whether something was gang related because somebody could be affiliated and there could be no denying that. But that does not make what they did something that's relevant to the gang, right? So for example, I had a case out of San Francisco with a person from a particular neighborhood. And there's pictures of them by signs and banners and graffiti that reflect the neighborhood that they're from, right? They have tattoos that reflect the neighborhood that they're from. And they were caught up for a shooting, right? Nobody was hit, but they fired a gun at some people from another neighborhood who may or may not have been affiliated. That's not the point, right? And it's all caught on surveillance camera. So the verbal exchange is caught. My guy pulling out the gun and firing is caught. Everybody running away is caught. He's caught running away. So all of this is on camera. And while he's in the county jail, he decides to get his neighborhood tattooed on his knuckles, right? Which was not particularly helpful when he's fighting an attempted murder case. So I testified in that case. And I argued that what he did was not gang related. What he did was a matter of protection, right? That he found himself in a situation where he felt his life was in danger, and therefore he reacted based on the resources that he had at the time. And that just because he had these tattoos does not mean he's a gang member. Those tattoos reflect a particular intersection in San Francisco that has a long history. And so one of the analogies I used is somebody from the Bronx, right? And they might have lived in the Bronx 30 years ago. But you ask them where they're from, maybe they're in the Bay Area, you're like, hey, where are you from? I'm from New York. I'm from the Bronx. And they're not affiliated. They could be an older white guy, right? But they take pride in where they're from. So again, why is it criminalized when people of color take pride in where they're from? And that's a natural phenomenon for people of all demographics. So the jury believed that he was not a part of a gang. And they believed that what he did had nothing to do with where he was from. So his defense was a self-defense claim. But you can't claim self-defense if it's gang-related. Because the view is, I mean, you can, but it doesn't work, right? Because the view is, if you're in a gang, everything you do is around that gang, right? And so you're living a hazardous lifestyle. You have conflicts with people because you're a gang member and they're a gang member, or they're not a gang member and you're fighting for the respect of your gang, or whatever other propaganda they use. So you can't claim self-defense in an effective way. But because the jury believed that gangs wasn't relevant to this, when the young man that was charged testified, then it was believable when you strip the gang stuff away and view it through just a strict lens of that situation. It is believable that he felt at the time his life was in danger and he did not have an alternative. Therefore, he was found not guilty, right? He was found guilty of shooting a gun, but he was not found guilty of the attempted murder. And so I say this to say the influence of people from the neighborhood or with some familiarity of the culture of the neighborhood can be huge, right? It's jurors hear cops all the time as gang experts, right? And they don't hear the perspective of the community. And lawyers, even if they know that stuff, they can't testify on your behalf. Sometimes people ask me why I'm not a lawyer, why I didn't go to law school. As some of you know, I got an associate's degree in sociology. I started college when I was in prison. And then I wound up going to UC Berkeley and taking classes there. So law school could have been a route for me. I have a paralegal certificate from Blackstone in prison. Anybody that's been to Pelican Bay back in the days is familiar with that. So, but I don't want to be a lawyer, because if I was a lawyer, then I have to find somebody like me to come and testify. I can't testify. So I like my role, and I think it's a necessary one. And we need more people to embrace the role. People from different areas, people from different perhaps affiliations, perhaps not affiliations, but just from different, neighborhoods, from different cultures, from different ethnic backgrounds, right? And because they can speak even better than I can. So there's some common stuff, there's some similarities. I do my research, I talk to people. I have a large network of folks that do community-based violence prevention and services all over the country, right? So that's helpful for me, but it's not the same as somebody who's walked those shoes getting up there and saying that. So how does that happen? Counties have different rules about how you get approved. So you can't just an attorney can't just turn around and be like, "Oh, hey, I like your style. I'm going to retain you." They have to get permission as a public defender. They have to get permission from the county that they're working under, right? So that county has to approve you as an expert in a particular field. Now, mind you, the standard of being an expert is pretty low, to be honest. You have to know more than the average person about an issue that the trier of fact, whether it's the jury or the judge, needs to know about in order to make a more just decision. So basically, you just got to know what you're talking about on an issue that's relevant to the charges. And you have to know what you're talking about more than your average person, so that you can, give information over, right? If it's common sense to the average person, then you're really not an expert. But the neighborhood and that kind of stuff is not common sense to people that have never experienced it. And so these academics, they talk in too flowery a language. Juries don't tend to believe them, even when they're with the defense, because they feel like, oh man, you have this PhD, or you're this noted sociologist, but you're not from the neighborhood. You're in an ivory tower, and you're using all these fancy terms and these syndromes and these analysis that we don't understand. And we feel like you could probably talk us into anything, so therefore we're not really going to take you that serious. I speak pretty plain language when I'm up there. I will use some sophisticated terms if I need to, but then I break down what those mean. Again, I have a history of being a teacher, so I'm very comfortable in that role. Uh, Granted, I was a teacher in prison, but nonetheless, it's a skill set. And I know that other people watching this video have that same skill set. And people can learn how to do this. You can learn what are the most common questions, right? So, anyways, back to the point, when you're approved to be a gang expert, then attorneys from that county can retain you, right? And for whatever the fee is, the fee ranges. My fees now are up over $100, right? When I do immigration cases and the money's being paid by the family, then I don't charge anywhere near that, right? I charge lower than they're ever going to get a report or something like that from anybody else. And I make it comprehensive. So for one flat fee, and if you ain't got it, get as close to it as you can. I'm not going to let money be the reason that you don't get the representation you deserve. But then I write the report, I do the investigation, I testify if it's necessary, and if there's any future appeals, I don't care if it's 5 years down the road, then I will do that too. And it is all covered under that one flat fee. I'm not saying everybody should work that way, but that's how I work. When the state is paying me, because I get paid by counties from the same pool of money that public defenders get paid from. So when the state is paying me, yeah, I tax them, right? When the federal government is paying me, yeah, I tax them. And I still don't tax them as much as other experts that they use. I'm still less expensive than if they were to go get some academic, or they were to go get some retired law enforcement officer who's getting his bread buttered on the other side now. And even the retired ones, they're not as effective as they could be, because they were trained in the same mindset and the same ideology as the cops that are arresting people. So like that first investigator I worked with, he goes, man, I would have never taken the approach that this person is not a gang member. because it matches what I read in the report from the police, matches what my understanding the factors of being a gang member are. Once I broke it down to him, he was like, wow, you know, you offer a better perspective for some people than I do. And I said, yeah, because you learn from the same playbook they learn from. So it's hard for you to challenge your peers, even though you're retired, unless they did something really ridiculous to you. Everything's ridiculous to me. So, anyways, that's how you get on board, right? And then other lawyers hear, all lawyers talk. So other lawyers hear about something or hear about your service on a case, and now they want you. And if they're operating out of a different county, then they get at whoever approves that on their end, right? And says, hey, I want to use this guy. It gets easier as you build a track record. And so in my case, the first couple cases I worked were just reports. I had an Asian gang case out of Sacramento, but he got popped in San Jose. I just wrote a report, right? Charges dropped, dude went home. And then the RICO indictment, I never testified in that case. I met with the attorneys for hours and hours and hours over the course of months and helped them analyze the information that they were getting from the feds, helped them interpret what they had, helped them with questions in terms of what to talk to their client about, right? Ways to have that conversation. And so I was still useful in that case, and I was still compensated in that case on an hourly rate. However, I didn't testify. So testifying is not always necessary. In immigration cases, a lot of times I don't testify. And when I do testify, I testify for cases all over the country. So I've had New York cases, New Jersey cases, a lot of Mara cases out of Chicago, obviously up and down California, Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, I think. So several states. But federal court, you could testify over the phone, right? Because the courts are so spaced out and they expect for people to be in different places. So even before COVID, they had it set up to do that. State courts don't, right? State courts, you have to show up in person. But I'm paid for my travel time. If I have to stay somewhere to go to court multiple days, then I'm compensated for a hotel room. And so sometimes I go to court just to listen to the other side's gang expert or the other side's witnesses, which sometimes are informants or co-defendants that rolled over. So I'll go listen to that stuff and then give feedback to the attorney. Sometimes in real time, I'm writing notes and passing them, right, to help them ask particular questions when they cross-examine them. But also just to compile I can get an idea of how the other side is operating and then help the attorney navigate that. Sometimes it's just working with clients, right, working with the person that's facing charges to help them in their relationship with the attorney, right? A lot of times there's mistrust. Sometimes that mistrust is deserved. Sometimes it's not. So I help that I'll be a buffer or a translator of sorts, right? A cultural translator. And so in that San Jose case I talked about with the Sureño, he had no interest in working with his attorney at all. And so in that one, I didn't testify, but I spent hours meeting with this dude at the county jail and talking to him. And we built a rapport, right? We built a connection to the point that he was willing to testify in his own case. He had no intention of participating at all. And then he went to the point of fully participating as long as I had a role in what he was doing. Because he trusted me, but he didn't necessarily trust the attorney. However, I trusted the attorney, and the attorney did a great job. Obviously, he got to go home instead of doing life in prison. So the aspect of the work doesn't always look the same, right? Sometimes it's just reports. Sometimes it's just advising. Sometimes it's a couple hours on a case. Sometimes it's months, right? Sometimes you work on it and you're working on it tough for a week or two, and then you don't hear nothing for a month, and then you're back working on it. Cases get resolved sometimes for other reasons, right? People take plea deals. The DA drops the charges. So it varies. And again, I got a pretty good network. So to wrap it up, what's the next step, right? I talked about the need for more people to be gang experts. And that doesn't mean that everybody that walked down the street with a paño or everybody that grew up in a low-income community and is a person of color is qualified to do this work, right? It is a high bar, and every case, just about, that I've ever testified in, I get grilled by the DA before I even get green lighted to testify. So the county gives me the green light to work with the attorney. But then in each case, they have what's called a voir dire process. And so in that process, the DA gets to question me about my expertise and then can make an argument to the judge that either I'm not an expert or my expertise is not relevant in this case or what have you. I've never lost a voir dire session, right? I've never not been deemed an expert by a court on any level. But that's because of how I articulate and how I express my track record. And my CV, which is basically like a different kind of a resume, is like 3-4 pages, right? Of places that I've worked and work that I've done and my personal experience in prison. So if you have that, right? And if you have some academic experience, that helps. DAs and judges and attorneys and juries still respect some type of formal education when it comes around gangs. They just don't want you to be so high and mighty that you could talk over everybody's head, right? So, but some learning, right? Some basis. Where do you get your knowledge from? Do you just talk to people from the neighborhood? Well, that doesn't qualify you to go work in another neighborhood, right? Or to represent folks from another neighborhood. So, a homeboy of mine from Norwalk, actually, who I expect to have on this channel at some point, Danny Murillo. Him and I have been talking, and with Alex Sanchez and some other people, about creating some type of a certificate program for people to get certified as gang experts by this independent body. And then with the hopes that A, they will be prepared to do the work, and B, that they will be more readily accepted when they do go to do the work, right? So that's not completely done yet. We're just sort of talking about it, but we're all action people, so I expect that talking to result in something tangible, and I will keep you guys updated as it goes along. The one thing is there are cases where I've denied the case, right? Where I've turned it down. And because my integrity is at stake every time I testify. So I don't get up there and BS. I don't get up there and lie. I don't get up there and cover for people. I don't get up there and tell on people. Obviously, I'm a part of the defense team. But I don't, I can't dismiss the truth. Because once that happens, not only are you harmful to that case, but you can really ruin your opportunity to work on other cases. Because as I said, attorneys talk, right? I actually made a mistake in a trial at some point in Santa Clara County a few years back. It was this, I was at trial and I was on lunch break when I found out that I was getting a divorce. So that had kind of surprised me. I was out of town. And I went on social media and talked mess about the DA. I didn't identify the DA. I didn't identify the county. I didn't identify anything about the case. But I kind of went ham on the DA with some humorous. I thought it was humorous on Twitter. The jury thought it was humorous too until I got to certain things, and then they didn't think it was humorous anymore. And so you have to be careful. And that kind of put me on freeze, so to speak, with some attorneys. Because they're like, now you got a little smudge on your record. But as time has gone on, people come back around. In part because they just need the work. They need the help, right? And not to pat myself on the back, but I'm pretty damn good at what I do. And so, but like I said, there's a lot of people that would be good at it. And so you have to be careful about your integrity. So there are some cases where I will tell the defense attorney straight up, look, I can make these points. I can help you with these arguments. But if you put me on the stand, I will have to concede some other things, right? So I would have to admit the truth of some of the stuff that the DA is saying. And that would be harmful to your guy, right? That wouldn't be helpful to them. So you probably don't want to put me on the stand because, again, I had to be honest, right? So, if they ask, oh, hey, what is an XIV tattoo? Or, hey, what does it mean if somebody has su 13 on the back of their head, right? I can't be like, oh, it means nothing. It means they're from south of the United States, or it means that they're just into Pope 14th, right, or whatever. I have to be honest. Um, and in some cases, something as simple as that could hurt the defense, right? Because obviously the cops are going to say that. But then here I am supposed to be defending this dude, and I'm saying the same thing. So that's a very simplified example, but there are cases where I'm just honest and upfront. And I tell them, if you still want to put me up there, that's fine. But here are the things that I expect to be asked, and here is the answers that I expect to give if I'm asked those things. And then I leave it up to them, right? I'm not an attorney. I don't pretend to be one. They're the experts in that arena. I just am the expert in mine. My technical title is an expert in urban prison and gang culture. But for short, people just call it gang expert. But not everything I talk about, like I said, is gangs. And I've talked about prison cases, prison assaults, the impact of incarceration on people once they come home. I had a white dude in San Francisco that shot a couple people that had razor bald heads. Turns out they were not skinheads, but part of that was his trauma from being incarcerated and having run-ins with the skinheads. So he was a wood, but he didn't rock with the skins. And it appeared to him that they were trying to break into his property. And when he saw it was nighttime, when he seen the bald heads, he felt in kind of his own trauma and PTSD. Oh, shoot, the skinheads are coming after me again. And so he blasted him, right? So that wasn't a gang thing, but his incarceration impacted his perspective on the world around him when he was in the streets. So again, there's a lot of areas this fits. So when you hear me and a gang expert or other people refer to me as a gang expert, now you know kind of what the background of that is. It does not mean I know everything. The word expert is not my favorite term, but it's necessary in the legal arena because I don't know it all and because things are ever changing. And there is some stuff that is outside my arena, right? So I'm not an expert on everything that is considered a gang by law enforcement. For specific hoods and neighborhoods and that kind of stuff. But again, it's a legal term that is necessary and appropriate and respected there. So I'm not trying to say I know it all, man. But I would encourage some of you to think about this, right? If you feel like the shoe fits you, if you've been engaging in community work, if you haven't been, but yet this might be something that you want to pursue, plug in, bro, or sis, right? Like it's plug in with folks that are doing the work. Build relationships and strive to build relationships outside of the neighborhood that you're most intimately familiar with, right? Because that will limit your effectiveness and your ability to work. If all you know is folks from Salinas East Marqueta, then you can't work on a Casitas case, right? Because they're going to say, man, you never talked to anybody from Casitas. So how does it work? Just as an example. And so, yeah, that's my spiel. Remember, being a homie is helping others move in excellence, and I hope you find a way to do that today and every day.